On July 16, 1945, in the desert of New Mexico, the world changed forever. A blinding flash, a shockwave, a mushroom cloud rising 12 kilometers into the sky. The scientists who built it had a name for the test: Trinity. J. Robert Oppenheimer, the man who led the project, later recalled a line from Hindu scripture passing through his mind. "Now I have become death, the destroyer of worlds." 3 weeks later, 2 cities were gone. And every nation on Earth began asking the same question: how do we get one?
According to the Federation of American Scientists, 9 countries today possess nuclear weapons, with an estimated total of around 12,100 warheads as of early 2026. That figure changes as countries update their arsenals, but the scale remains the same, enough to end human civilization many times over. This is the story of how each of them got there, and what it tells us about the world we live in right now.
It started with a letter. In August 1939, Albert Einstein, the most famous scientist in the world, wrote to President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The message was urgent and simple. Germany was working on an atomic bomb. America needed to get there first. Roosevelt acted. What followed was the Manhattan Project, the largest and most secret scientific undertaking in history. $2 billion, 130,000 people, laboratories hidden in remote locations across America and Canada.
The scientists recruited were the best in the world, many of them refugees from Nazi Europe, working to ensure that Hitler would never be the first to possess the weapon they were building. On August 6, 1945, a uranium bomb called Little Boy was dropped on Hiroshima. Approximately 70,000 people died instantly. Tens of thousands more died from radiation in the weeks and months that followed.
3 days later, a plutonium bomb called Fat Man was dropped on Nagasaki. Another 40,000 killed instantly. Japan surrendered. World War II ended. And America had a monopoly on the most destructive weapon ever created. It would last exactly 4 years.
America believed its monopoly would last at least a decade. It lasted 4 years because of spies. The Soviet nuclear program began in 1943, while the Manhattan Project was still running. Soviet intelligence had recruited several scientists working inside the American program. The most significant was Klaus Fuchs, a German-born British physicist who passed detailed technical blueprints directly to Moscow. Stalin knew about the atomic bomb before most American politicians did.
On August 29, 1949, the Soviet Union detonated its first nuclear device, codenamed Joe 1 by American intelligence. The American monopoly was over. The arms race that followed would define the next 40 years. At its peak in 1986, the United States and Soviet Union together held over 60,000 nuclear warheads. 60,000! The Cold War was, at its core, a standoff between 2 countries holding enough weapons to destroy the Earth many times over, each hoping the other would never use them. That doctrine had a name: mutually assured destruction. MAD.
It worked until it almost didn't. The Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962 brought the world to the edge. And in 1983, a Soviet early warning system malfunctioned and indicated an incoming American missile strike. A Soviet officer named Stanislav Petrov decided, against protocol and on his own instinct, that it was a false alarm. He was right. He never fired back. One man's decision may have saved the world that night. Most people have never heard his name.
Britain helped build the bomb, then had to build its own. British scientists were instrumental in the Manhattan Project. When the war ended, Britain expected America to share the technology. Congress passed a law that made that illegal. Britain decided to go alone. On October 3, 1952, Britain detonated its first nuclear device off the coast of Australia. It became the third nuclear power, a status British leaders argued was essential for maintaining influence in a world now dominated by two superpowers.
Britain's reasoning was simple and has never entirely changed. A permanent seat on the UN Security Council, a place at the table when the world's most important decisions are made. Nuclear weapons in the post-war world were the price of continued relevance. Today, Britain maintains an arsenal of approximately 225 warheads, according to recent public estimates, carried exclusively by submarine-launched ballistic missiles.
France drew a different lesson from World War II. The country had been occupied, liberated by others, and left dependent on American protection. For French leaders, and especially for Charles de Gaulle, that dependence was unacceptable. France needed its own nuclear deterrent, independent, answerable to no one. On February 13, 1960, France detonated its first nuclear device in the Algerian Sahara, then still a French territory. De Gaulle called it glorious for France.
The French nuclear doctrine has a name: Force de Frappe, strike force. The principle is that France will never rely on another country's nuclear umbrella. It will maintain its own, permanently. According to recent public estimates, France holds approximately 290 warheads, delivered through submarine-launched ballistic missiles and air-launched cruise missiles, an entirely independent nuclear capability, answerable only to Paris. China's path to nuclear weapons begins with humiliation. For a century, China had been carved up by foreign powers: Britain, France, Japan, Russia. When the Communist Party took power in 1949, ending what it called the century of humiliation became the defining mission. A country that had been dominated by outside powers needed the ultimate deterrent.
The Soviet Union initially helped, sharing nuclear technology as part of the alliance between the two communist powers. Then, in 1960, the relationship collapsed. Soviet advisors were withdrawn overnight, taking blueprints and equipment with them. China continued alone.
On October 16, 1964, China detonated its first nuclear device in the Gobi Desert. It became the fifth nuclear power and the first in Asia. Here is the fact that matters for everything that follows. China's nuclear test directly triggered India's decision to build its own bomb. One test, one decision. Ripples that are still spreading today.
India's nuclear program was born on the day China tested its bomb. India and China had fought a border war in 1962. China won decisively, humiliating the Indian military. 2 years later, China had nuclear weapons. India's leaders gave the order to begin a nuclear weapons program within months of China's test.
On May 18, 1974, India detonated its first nuclear device, officially called a peaceful nuclear explosion. The world was not deceived. India insisted it had no intention of building weapons. Then, it kept building. On May 11th and 13th, 1998, India conducted 5 nuclear tests in rapid succession, Operation Shakti. It formally declared itself a nuclear weapons state. Within 2 weeks, Pakistan responded.
Pakistan's nuclear program has one founding moment.
December 1971. Pakistan loses a war with India. Bangladesh is created from what had been East Pakistan. It is a military, political, and national humiliation on a scale Pakistan has never forgotten. Prime Minister Zulfikar Ali Bhutto gathered his country's top scientists days after the defeat. His words are on record. "We will build the bomb, even if we have to eat grass." Pakistan's program moved faster than anyone expected. It was helped significantly by A.Q. Khan, a Pakistani metallurgist who had worked at a uranium enrichment facility in the Netherlands and returned home with stolen centrifuge blueprints. Khan later built a global black market in nuclear technology, selling designs and equipment to Libya, Iran, and North Korea. On May 28, 1998, 16 days after India's tests, Pakistan detonated 5 nuclear devices. The subcontinent now had 2 nuclear-armed neighbors sharing a contested border. It remains one of the most dangerous nuclear flashpoints on Earth today.
Israel has never admitted it has nuclear weapons. It has never denied it either. This is called nuclear ambiguity, and it is one of the most sophisticated strategic policies any country has ever maintained. Here is what is known, based on declassified documents, defector testimony, and intelligence assessments. Israel began its nuclear program in the late 1950s under founding Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion. A newly created state, surrounded by larger Arab neighbors who had already tried to destroy it once, Israel decided the ultimate deterrent was non-negotiable. France was the key partner. A secret agreement in 1957 led to the construction of a nuclear reactor and reprocessing plant deep in the Negev desert, near the town of Dimona. The construction was hidden from American inspectors. Entire floors concealed, false walls erected, the real purpose disguised. By most expert assessments, Israel had assembled its first nuclear device before the 1967 Six-Day War.
In 1969, a secret agreement between President Nixon and Israeli Prime Minister Golda Meir formalized an arrangement. Israel would not test or publicly acknowledge its weapons. America would stop pressuring Israel to open Dimona to inspection. That agreement has held for over 50 years. Israel today is estimated to hold between 80 and 200 nuclear warheads, though the precise figure remains unknown. It has never signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, and it maintains its policy of ambiguity to this day, the only nuclear power on Earth that officially neither confirms nor denies its arsenal exists. North Korea's nuclear story is one we've covered in full on the World Told channel, and if you haven't seen that documentary, it tells the complete story from the 1950s to 2026. But here is the essential version. North Korea began its nuclear program with Soviet assistance in the 1950s. For decades, it moved slowly under international pressure and intermittent diplomacy. Many analysts believe North Korea drew a critical lesson from what happened to Libya, where Muammar Gaddafi gave up his weapons program in 2003 and was later overthrown and killed. Whether or not that specific lesson directly shaped Kim's thinking, the result is clear. North Korea conducted its first nuclear test in 2006. 6 tests followed. ICBMs capable of reaching the United States, tactical nuclear weapons, a hydrogen bomb. As of 2026, North Korea is expanding its uranium enrichment facilities and building additional production capacity. Kim Jong-un has written nuclear status into the Constitution. He has stated publicly that denuclearization will never happen. The lesson every analyst draws from North Korea's experience is the same. Once you have the bomb, you keep it. Here is the most surprising chapter in the entire nuclear story. 4 countries gave up nuclear weapons voluntarily. After the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, 3 former Soviet republics found themselves in possession of nuclear weapons: Ukraine, Belarus, and Kazakhstan. Ukraine inherited approximately 1,900 nuclear warheads, making it the third largest nuclear arsenal on Earth overnight. In 1994, Ukraine signed the Budapest Memorandum. It agreed to give up all its nuclear weapons and transfer them to Russia. In exchange, the United States, Britain, and Russia provided security assurances, promising to respect Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity.
The precise legal weight of those assurances has been debated by international lawyers ever since. What is not debated is what followed. In 1996, the last warhead left Ukrainian soil. In 2014, Russia annexed Crimea. In 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion. The country that gave up the world's third largest nuclear arsenal in exchange for security assurances watched those assurances fail completely at the hands of one of the countries that signed them. If you want to understand why North Korea will never give up its weapons, this is the story you need to know.
South Africa is the only country in history to independently build nuclear weapons and then voluntarily destroy them. 6 bombs, dismantled in secret in 1989, before the program was publicly acknowledged in 1993. The reasons were specific to South Africa's unique circumstances: the end of apartheid, the collapse of Soviet influence in southern Africa, and the desire to reintegrate into the international community. No other country has ever done what South Africa did. And given what happened to Ukraine, it is very difficult to imagine any country doing it again.
Iran does not currently have nuclear weapons. What Iran has is the knowledge, the infrastructure, and, according to multiple intelligence assessments, the technical capability to enrich uranium to weapons-grade level if it chose to pursue that path. The 2015 nuclear deal, the JCPOA, temporarily limited Iran's program in exchange for sanctions relief. When the United States withdrew from the deal in 2018, Iran gradually began exceeding its enrichment limits.
In 2026, U.S. and Israeli military strikes targeted Iranian nuclear and military facilities. Authoritative assessments of the full impact on Iran's nuclear program are still emerging at the time of this documentary. And viewers interested in the deeper story of the Iran-Israel conflict will find our full documentary on the World Told channel. Whether Iran ever crosses the final threshold to a nuclear weapon is one of the defining questions of the next decade. We'll continue following this story in future World Told documentaries.
9 countries, around 12,100 warheads, each one built for a reason that seemed at the time completely justified. America built the bomb to stop Hitler. The Soviet Union built it to match America. Britain built it to stay relevant. France built it to stay independent. China built it to end humiliation. India built it because of China. Pakistan built it because of India. Israel built it and never admitted it. North Korea built it and dared the world to stop them. Every country that got the bomb believed it had no choice.
Every country that gave it up later questioned that decision or paid a price for it. And the world has spent 80 years building treaties, inspection regimes, and diplomatic frameworks to stop the club from growing. It has worked, imperfectly, partially, and with several very close calls that most people never heard about. The nuclear club has 9 members today. The question that keeps weapons inspectors, intelligence analysts, and world leaders awake at night is simple. Who is number 10?